AITA for following my daughter's whispered warning in a bathroom stall, which horrified us all. While we were shopping, my 8-year-old daughter grabbed my hand and said, "Mom, quick, to the bathroom." In the stall, she whispered, "Don't move. Look." I crouched down and froze in horror. I didn't cry. I acted. 3 hours later, my mother-in-law turned pale because I was laughing at children's fears. Not out loud, not cruelly, just with the quiet amusement of adults. Monsters under the bed, shadows in the hallway. Is someone watching me? Sure, honey. One Sunday, I was crouched on the sticky floor of a mall bathroom just outside Columbus, Ohio, holding my 8-year-old daughter's hand as a pair of polished black dress shoes stopped in front of our stall. And a man's voice, low and calm, said into a phone, "Yes, mother and daughter. The girl's about 8, they have shopping bags. Blue dress, blue dress." My daughter had picked it out 10 minutes earlier. It was in our bag. That was when the category of adorable childhood fears died. Sophie was squeezing my fingers so hard it hurt. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. She put a finger to her lips like we were in a movie. Only in movies the bathroom floor isn't tacky and your heart isn't trying to leap out of your throat. "Don't move," she whispered. So I didn't. I watched the shoes through the gap under the stall door. Slow steps. A pause. Slow steps. A stop, as if he was checking each stall. One by one, as if he had all the time in the world. The shoes stopped right in front of ours. Sophie's breath disappeared. So did mine. Then the shoes moved again and the voice continued as if giving a weather forecast. "They should have come this way if they haven't left already." "Yes, I'll keep looking." My brain tried to catch up. A man in a women's restroom. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a hunt. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and pressed record, because if working in healthcare teaches you anything, it's this. If it isn't documented, it didn't happen. The shoes made another sweep, then stopped. A stall door creaked. Another creak. Sophie's eyes went wide. That's when I did the only thing I could do without giving us away. I dialed 911. It wasn't a dramatic call, no screaming, just, "Women's restroom. Man inside. Following us. 8-year-old with me. Please." The response was fast. "Stay where you are. Officers are on the way. Notify mall security if you can do so safely." Mall security. God bless the American tradition of delegating panic to some guy in a polo shirt. But it was something. When the shoes headed toward the sinks, I grabbed Sophie and we moved like smoke. Fast, silent, bags clutched tight. We ran straight to the security office like our lives had a loyalty card. The guard looked skeptical. Of course he did. 2 females bursting in with shopping bags and wild eyes. It wasn't credible. It was Black Friday energy. "What's the problem?" he asked, already bracing for a coupon complaint. Sophie, trembling, described the man perfectly. The shoes, the suit, the camera strap. And then I played the audio. His face changed in real time. That's not normal," he said. "Seriously." He pulled up the cameras. We watched the footage like it was a low-budget horror film. And there he was, mid-40s, dark suit, neat hair. He was holding a small camera like it was an accessory, not a weapon. He walked with the confidence of someone who thinks rules are for other people. Security tracked him through the building. 30 minutes later, they found him. He didn't run. He didn't even look surprised. When the guard questioned him, the man calmly produced a plastic card. "I'm Grant Harrison," he said. "What investigation?" the guard asked. "I can't disclose that," Harrison replied smoothly. "Client confidentiality." And then he said something that should have been funny but wasn't. "But I'm not doing anything illegal. A private detective in a women's restroom looking for a mother and child." Right. Security called the police anyway because even in America, a badge you buy online doesn't magically exempt you from common sense. A patrol car arrived about 20 minutes later. One officer looked at Sophie and softened. Then he looked at Harrison and did not soften at all. Harrison was escorted out and then my phone rang. My brother-in-law. "Becca," he said, breathless. "Are you okay? I heard something happened." I blinked. "Caleb, how do you know?" "I saw it online," he said quickly. "People were posting. Some suspicious guy at the mall. I thought it might be you." It had been less than an hour. Maybe in the age of neighborhood apps and local Facebook groups that wasn't impossible, but it still landed wrong. How Caleb always seemed to know things before I told him. "I'm on my way," he said. "Where are you?" "We're with the police," I answered. "They want statements at the station, but I can drive myself." "I'm coming anyway." He hung up before I could argue. Of course he was. 2 years earlier, my husband Ethan died in a car accident. One minute you're arguing over whether to buy brand-name cereal. The next you're signing forms you can't read through your tears. After that, my entire life became a schedule. Shifts, bills, school pickups, surviving on the occasional spaghetti. I'm a nurse, 12-hour shifts. The kind where you get home feeling like your bones are on loan. Sophie and I became a routine held together with wreckage. Homework at the kitchen table, cartoons after dinner, spaghetti night when we needed comfort, something we could just chew. Ethan had loved tomato sauce. He grew basil in a planter on our balcony like it was a sacred ritual. One night at the grocery store, Sophie said casually, pushing the cart like she owned the place, "I have a math test tomorrow. Are you ready?" I asked because that's what moms do when they're trying not to think about anything else. "I'm fine," she said, then got quieter. "But Grandma Judy keeps asking if school is hard, like she wants me to say yes." I paused in the rice aisle. My mother-in-law, Judith Judy Carver, Sophie's grandma, had been interested lately. Not typical grandma interested. The measuring kind. "Is your mom helping you? Is she home a lot? Does she leave you alone?" It was always framed as concern, but it was laced with something else. Back home, Sophie helped me make dinner, peeling tomatoes while I tried not to drown in memories. "Dad would love this," she said softly. I swallowed hard. "Yeah, he would. Next time let's get basil." I nodded because saying no would have felt like erasing him. We were finally sitting down to eat when the doorbell rang. It was around 8 p.m. Late enough you don't expect company unless there's trouble. I opened the door to find Caleb standing there with a small bouquet of flowers, as if this were normal. "Hey," he said gently. "Just wanted to check on you too." Caleb was Ethan's younger brother, newly divorced, and he still wore that lonely look like a coat he couldn't take off. Sophie shrieked because she loved people before she found out they could be complicated. Caleb swept her up and handed her a small box. Inside was a stuffed animal of her favorite cartoon character. She lit up. I didn't because we hadn't told Caleb who her favorite character was. We really hadn't. He shouldn't have known exactly which one to buy. That night, after Sophie was asleep, I sat alone with my coffee and tried to be fair. He's lonely. He misses his brother. He misses having a family. Fine. But then his visits became scheduled. Every day around 6 p.m., the doorbell would ring as if Caleb had set an alarm. He always brought something. Candy, school supplies. Another toy. The first week I was grateful. By the second week, Sophie started to sigh when the bell rang. "He's here again," she'd whisper, her smile dimming a little. Caleb would sit on the couch and talk about how empty his apartment was, how much we were all he had left, how Ethan would have wanted him to look after us. That phrase, "Ethan would have wanted," became his master key. He used it on every locked door. I tried once, carefully. "Caleb, maybe not every day," I said, aiming for kind instead of harsh. "Sometimes we're just exhausted." He blinked as if the idea offended him. Then he apologized and showed up the next day anyway. Of course he did. One evening he said, like he was reading from a calendar, "Can I come watch Sophie rehearse her class presentation next Thursday? It's at 2 p.m. My blood ran cold. "How did you know the day and time?" I asked. "Sophie told me," he said, smiling. I looked at Sophie. She looked confused. "I didn't," she said slowly. Caleb gave an awkward laugh. "Oh, maybe I heard it some other way." "Some other way." Right. He showed up at the school anyway, sat in the auditorium among the parents like he belonged there, like he was filling Ethan's spot. After Sophie's presentation, Caleb handed her a tiny bouquet. She thanked him politely. In the car on the way home, Sophie stared out the window and whispered, "Mom, it makes me tired when Uncle Caleb comes over." "Why, honey?" She hesitated. "I feel like he's watching me, like he knows all the things I love, but I don't remember telling him." Kids have no filter and no reason to lie about that. So I started watching Caleb. The way his eyes scanned the room, the way he'd pick up framed photos and hold them for a second too long, the way he'd look over Sophie's homework like it was evidence. One afternoon he mentioned something that hadn't even been discussed in our house. "Oh, Sophie must be excited for the zoo field trip next month," he said with a smile. "Packing a lunch will be a challenge." I froze. The zoo permission slip had come home the day before. It was on Sophie's desk under a pile of papers. I hadn't even read it yet. "Where did you hear that?" I asked carefully. "From Sophie," he said quickly. Sophie's head shot up. I didn't tell him. The silence filled the room. Caleb forced a laugh. No, he didn't. That night I noticed something else. The school papers on Sophie's desk were neat. Not messy and piled up. Organized. "Did you clean out your desk?" I asked her. She shook her head. "Nope." The next day, I watched from the second-story window as Caleb left. He stopped outside, turned, and looked up at our living room window as if he were checking something. My stomach clenched. Sophie came up behind me and whispered, "Mom, Uncle Caleb is weird, isn't he?" "What makes you say that?" "He always asks where we're going when you work, if we'll be home on Saturday. Why does he need to know?" Then came the moment that broke my last attempt at, maybe I'm overreacting. Caleb asked for a spare key. "Just in case," he said. "If something ever happened to you, I'd need to get in. I'm family, aren't I?" "No," I said immediately. He frowned. "Our neighbor Monica has a key." "Your neighbor isn't family. Ethan would want me to handle this." Something in me snapped. "Don't use my husband as a lever," I said. That's when Sophie, barely audible, said, "Uncle Caleb, you're a little scary." For a split second, Caleb's face changed. It hardened, looked almost hungry. Then it softened back into a smile. "Scary Uncle Caleb just wants to protect you," he said sweetly. Sophie moved behind me. Her gut knew something my grief was trying to deny. The mall trip was supposed to be a break. New clothes, because Sophie was growing as if she had a secret contract with time. Milkshakes, a normal Sunday. She found the blue dress and twirled in the dressing room like the world was safe again. We browsed the stores, our bags getting heavier. We sat in the food court with shakes and fries and Sophie gave a happy sigh. "This is fun," she said. "When Uncle Caleb isn't here, we can relax." That stung because she was 8 and shouldn't have needed relax, as a concept tied to an adult relative. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. "Uncle Caleb came by when you weren't home," she said quietly. "What?" "Last Wednesday, he was outside our building when I got home from school. He asked if you were back yet. I told him I was going to Mrs. Monica's. He said okay and left. Wednesday was my late shift. I didn't get home until after 9 p.m. Caleb should not have known Sophie would be alone at drop-off, or that she'd be going to Monica's. I felt cold all over. We threw out our empty cups and headed for the exit. That's when Sophie stopped. "Mom," she whispered. Her face was pale. "That man." I followed her gaze. A man in the food court, dark suit, black shoes. "Sophie," I started. "To the bathroom," she said with urgency. The panic in her voice wasn't normal. It wasn't drama, it was survival, so we moved. She pulled me into the women's restroom and then stopped again at the door, as if she couldn't breathe. "Come with me," she pleaded. "It's okay, I'll." "No, together." So we went into one stall together. 2 bodies, 1 small space, my shopping bags pressed against my knees, her hand trembling in mine. Then came the shoes and the voice, and the blue dress became proof we were being tracked. You know what happened next because that's where the story began. But here's what happened after. We got out, we ran, we told security we found Harrison, and then we went to the police station. At the station, the fluorescent lights made everything, including my own hands, look worse. Sophie sat beside me silently, holding onto my sleeve like it was the only stable thing in the room. Harrison sat across the hall, still calm, still polite, as if this were an appointment, not a serious situation. Caleb showed up before we finished giving our statements. He was pale. He rushed to Sophie first, crouching down to her level. "Are you okay?" he asked. Sophie nodded but didn't lean toward him. That was new. A detective interviewed Harrison. At first, Harrison wouldn't talk. Then the detective calmly explained what entering a women's restroom to pursue a minor looks like in court. Harrison's confidence cracked. Finally, he said it. I was hired. Hired by who? The detective asked. A woman named Judith Carver. My ears were ringing. My mother-in-law. My hands felt numb. Why would she hire you? The detective continued. Harrison swallowed. To document the daily life of Rebecca Carver. He said it was to assess my parenting, that there was a concern the child was being neglected because the mother worked too much. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. What does that mean? Cried out. Harrison looked down. She believed the mother was unfit. She wanted evidence for a custody petition. Custody? Of my daughter. From me. Because I work? Because I'm tired? Because my husband died and I didn't fall apart politely enough? Caleb was staring as if he'd been punched. No, he said. No, my mom wouldn't do that. The detective's gaze sharpened. Mr. Carver, he said, you've been at Mrs. Carver's home frequently. You've answered questions about her schedule, school events, plans. Caleb opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I was just worried, he finally said. About my sister-in-law and my niece. Worried about what? The detective asked. Caleb froze and then Sophie spoke softly. I saw that man at Grandma Judy's house, she said. The room went silent. The detective turned gently. Sophie. 2 weeks ago, she said. When I visited, he was there talking to her. Harrison flinched. Because children don't lie when they aren't trying to protect anyone. The detective asked him how many times he had met with Judith. 3, Harrison admitted. Initial instructions, then an update, then further instructions. What further instructions? The detective asked. More pictures, Harrison said. Try to record conversations. Find out if Rebecca has any habits, any connections, anything compromising. My stomach churned. Our lives, our shopping, our school pickups, my late shifts, Sophie's blue dress. All of it was being cataloged as evidence. Then the detective brought out a binder. Inside were dozens of photos. Sophie and me at the park. Me picking her up from school. Me carrying groceries. Me laughing with her on a bench, looking like I had no idea I was being watched. There were printouts of my social media profiles, copies of my work schedules pulled from somewhere in the hospital system where no one should have been pulling them. And then the worst part. A typed-out plan, a checklist for painting me as a negligent, overworked and emotionally unstable mother in the wake of her grief. Frequently absent, lacking supervision. There was also a neat little section on Judith. Stable income, a paid-off condo, a clean and organized environment, a deep interest in the child's education. As if parenting were a resume competition. Caleb was staring at the pages, trembling. My mom, she was really going to do this, he whispered. She was using me. The detective didn't answer for him. Caleb looked at me desperate. Becca, he said, his voice cracking. I swear I didn't know. I wanted to believe him. I also wanted to throw him out of my life like he was on fire. Both feelings existed at once. Judith came to the station the next day. She started crying immediately. The purposeful kind of crying. My Sophie, she wept. She's all I have left of Ethan. She looked at me as if I were a temporary obstacle, as if I were young and replaceable. Rebecca was working so much, she said, dabbing her face. It's so hard for her alone. I could give Sophie a better life. More attention. The detective's voice remained flat. Do you understand you can't separate a child from a fit mother because you disagree with her schedule? Judith's lip quivered. I had no choice, she whispered. No, she had choices. She chose control. That's the thing people never admit. They call it love because it sounds better. The fallout was swift after that. A judge signed a temporary restraining order. Judith couldn't contact Sophie directly. Any visitation had to be supervised. No drop-ins. No just checking. No surprise appearances at school. Child Protective Services came by once because of course they did. They saw the homework on the table and my hospital ID still clipped to its lanyard like a scar. They asked Sophie if she felt safe. Sophie said yes. Then they asked if anyone made her feel unsafe. Sophie answered quietly, Grandma Judy. That was enough. Judith left town not long after. Went to live with her sister in another state to recover. Because apparently even those who cause harm need a vacation. Harrison faced legal trouble, and suddenly his confidential investigation didn't sound so official anymore. A week later, Caleb knocked on our door. This time, he didn't appear as if he owned the place. He knocked once, then waited. When I opened the door, he looked like a man who had aged a year and 7 days. "Becca," he said quietly, "can we talk?" We sat in the living room. Sophie was doing homework in her room the way kids do when they're listening. Caleb looked down at his hands. "I didn't know," he said again. "I swear. I just thought my mom was worried. She asked questions and I answered them. I wasn't thinking." I leaned back. "So you gave her information?" Caleb nodded. "Yes." He swallowed hard. "She kept saying I was the only man left in the family," he admitted. "That I should be your support, that Ethan would have wanted it." I flinched hearing Ethan's name again, as if it still had leverage. Caleb hesitated, then added, almost voiceless, "And that wasn't all of it." I waited. He looked up. His eyes were red. "I always liked you." The words hung in the air. "Even when Ethan was alive." He said it fast, like confessing quicker made it less awful. "I never did anything about it. I never would have. But after he was gone I cared too much. And my mom, she used that. She knew I'd show up, knew I'd try to help." He laughed once. It was bitter. I was stupid. Then Sophie appeared in the doorway as if on cue. "Are you guys talking?" she asked. Caleb got down on his knees in front of her. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry you were scared because of me." Sophie watched him for a long time. Then she said, serious and simple, "You're not bad. Grandma Judy tricked you." Caleb's face crumpled. "That doesn't excuse it," he whispered. Sophie reached out and took his hand. "But if you weren't around," she said quietly, "maybe it would have been worse because then we wouldn't have noticed something was wrong." I turned away so they wouldn't see my eyes. Because sometimes an 8-year-old says something so wise it breaks you. Caleb didn't become family again overnight. He earned his way back, the way you rebuild a house after a fire. Slow, careful, no sudden moves. He stopped asking where we were going. He stopped trying to check in on everything. He just showed up when we asked. To fix a leaky faucet, to pick Sophie up from school if I was held late at the hospital, to help me drive out to the old cabin Ethan had loved so I could keep the small vegetable garden alive, because it felt wrong to let that die too. He told Sophie stories about Ethan as a little boy, not to replace him but to keep him real. Sophie drank those stories in like oxygen. Some nights, Caleb and I would sit at the kitchen table with tea in silence. Not romantic. Not yet. Just human. I started to see him as a person, not just a role. Not my husband's brother. Not Judith's son. Just Caleb. And that made all the difference. A year later, spring came with lilacs and that soft air that feels like breathing again. Caleb and I got married quietly, no spectacle, no performance. Sophie wore a white dress and scattered flower petals down the aisle, beaming like she was carrying sunlight. After the ceremony, she hugged me tight. "Mom," she asked softly, "are you happy?" I kissed her head. "I am," I said. She looked up at the sky. "Do you think Dad can see us?" A lump formed in my throat. Still did even after a while. "Yes," I said. "I think he can. And I think he would want us to be safe." Caleb lifted Sophie into his arms. "I'm not here to erase your dad," he told her gently. "We'll always remember him." Sophie wrapped her arms around his neck. "I love Dad Caleb," she declared, and then added just as firmly, "And I love Dad Ethan." And somehow that made room in my chest for peace. Somewhere else, another city, another window, Judith was probably still staring out of it and calling it heartbreak. Maybe it was, but heartbreak doesn't give you a license to hunt a child. We didn't cut her out completely. Months later, after court reviews, contact was limited to supervised calls, brief and structured, and on our terms. Limits she hated until finally she learned them. And me, I learned something too. Love that demands control isn't love, it's ownership. Comment. What I take away from this is that setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness, but a profound act of self-respect. It is a powerful reminder to listen to the quiet voice inside, especially when it tells you that something does not feel right. Real love offers freedom and security, while control only creates a sense of unease. True strength often means protecting your peace with both kindness and unwavering resolve. We also see that healing requires accountability, not just the passage of time. Forgiveness can be a path forward, but it must rest on trust that has been genuinely rebuilt. Ultimately, you have the right to choose your own circle of safety and support. You deserve relationships where you feel seen, respected, and truly secure. Never be afraid to choose your peace and build a life that brings you genuine happiness. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.